Sharon, thank you for being willing to tell your story. I know that this isn't easy for you. We can see the look on your face, but we're glad that you're here. And you don't like public speaking, and so this is a unique thing. But I thought that yours would be a story really worth hearing. And so I am very grateful that you've been willing to stretch yourself a bit in this way. You did stipulate the one thing in your agreement to do this was that you wanted us to be aware that everyone has a story and that everyone's story matters and that your story is no more important than anyone else's, but it is a story, and it's a story that speaks about God's presence amongst us and in us and the unique ways in which he works with us. And so I suppose at the end of the day, what we hope for more than anything in this conversation is simply that someone will be helped by it. That's really the motive for us doing this. We hope that someone will be helped by it. So thank you. So can we start at the beginning of your story? Sound of Music would agree it's always a very good place to start. And so I think you have an unusual, almost exotic birth story. Can you tell us a little bit of how you came into the world?
Yeah. Hi. My mother was on her way from PE, visiting her parents in PE to Joburg, and went into labour just as they were pulling out of the Noordpoort station. And Noordpoort, I found out, is a railway junction. And anyway, they stopped the train, got her off, got her to hospital. It was big stories because they hadn't really had a lot of births at that time, so she was treated very well, and I was early, so she didn't have baby clothes or anything prepared for my birth, and people rallied around and were fantastic with her. In the process, I was born with a cleft palate, and they were incredible because they picked it up within like 24 hours, where they reckon at a bigger hospital it might have taken a while for them to find out. So that helped with feeding, etc., etc.
Okay. And so you came into the world in an unusual way.
A railway junction.
Yeah, in a railway junction, indeed. And then, as happens tragically to many families, in fact as many as perhaps half of all families, your parents went through a divorce when you were still very young, and that ended up having a significant impact on both you and your younger sister, I think. Are you able to tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, my parents were only married a total of 7 years. When they got divorced, I was 5 and my sister was 3. We lived between my grandparents and my mother for the first couple of years of our lives, and then we were with my mother when we started school, or when I started school. So I started school at Summerwood, and in Sub A, my mother, halfway through Sub A, decided that she didn't really want to be parenting anymore, and she'd met a guy and he'd gone off to Rhodesia and she was going to follow him to Rhodesia. So we went off and stayed so my father moved in with us, and so she moved to Rhodesia, we stayed in PE for a while and continued to go to school with my father.
Yeah. And
thereafter, I think after a year or so, I don't know if it was quite that long, she sent for us to come to Rhodesia, because in that time she'd fallen out with the guy she followed and had met another man and married him.
Sure.
And she decided that she wanted us to be part of that. So we flew, my sister and I, our first flight ever, without any parents. We had, we flew alone from.
Remind us how old you were for that?
Well, I would have been 6, 7, and my sister would have been about 4.
Yeah,
4 or 5.
And flying unassisted, or?
Yeah, unassisted to Rhodesia. And then we got to Rhodesia and we actually she enrolled us in a school there. I remember it being called the David Livingstone School. And my sister would have been at home. In those days they had house guys, not women. And I remember ours was called Joseph. And the man she married was a policeman. So we used to go to I saw the first TV ever, and we'd go to the CID club and watch TV and have Coke and salt and vinegar chips, and to this day my sister still remembers the salt and vinegar chips.
Yeah.
Anyway, and that marriage went south, and my mother then put us into a children's home called the Emerald Hill Children's Home in Rhodesia.
Whereabout would old-fashioned Salisbury? Or?
It was in Salisbury. Now, all of this took place in Salisbury. And obviously, while we were there, then families would take you home for the weekend or on holidays. So I managed to go to Byra and to the Victoria Falls with different families. And the home is run by nuns. I don't have a huge memory of it. I just remember it being high on a hill. And every now and then my mother would visit, and she had one of those little beetle car things. And she would come and visit occasionally. One family took us home, my sister and I, and wanted to adopt us, and the two of us. And my mother, from what I gather, was quite keen, but my father not.
Sure.
So they obviously had to get his permission, so he came to Rhodesia to fetch us.
So your sense is your mom might have been happy with you being adopted by another family?
Well, we're not sure, because my father did come up and we came back home with him.
Yeah.
And then she followed thereafter.
Yeah.
And then we were put into boarding school here in Grahamstown. Because my father had a wife that wasn't that partial to children at that stage.
How do you think that experience of the being put into a children's home, living in a children's home, sometimes being taken out over weekends by other families, do you think you see a direct line between that experience and some of your adult experiences, like how you are as a person? Or
yeah, I think a lot of my control issues and a lot of my underlying aggression is as a result of being abandoned. I mean, we couldn't trust anything as far as our parents went. There was no steady ground. Everything was pulled out all the time. So my sister, fortunately, we had each other. So we were fortunate in that we could hold on to each other in this. And it would have been very, very hard if it was a single child.
Yeah.
And yeah.
So your sister and you remain with a strong bond between you?
We do. I mean, we've been through
a lot together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I need to mention I went to 7 primary schools.
Sure. Primary schools.
We were pushed around, so we moved around a lot between parents and different places. Yeah.
So I'm not sure if it's still a word used, but your tween years and your teenage years also weren't simple. So when you came back to South Africa after those few years in what was then Rhodesia, your life also then had its own challenges as a young person, hey?
Well, we still moved between my mother and my father, and then when we started high school, we were with my mother. And I started at Pearson High School, and I mean, we never got into drugs or anything illegal, but we had absolutely no structure. We had no parental,
oversight.
Nothing. Yeah. The parents we brought ourselves up. And because we had learned to use a phone when it was locked, my mother would put the phone in her car and take it with her to work every day. And I had started bunking school quite a bit. And the principal had tried to phone me, or the school had tried to phone me to tell me to come to school, and of course there was no phone. It was in the boot of her car. So a friend had told me that I needed to be at school. And I had a wonderfully, wonderfully understanding principal at the time in Pearson, Mr. Duplessis. Very kind to me when I actually went back to school, and then had to stand outside the principal's office every day for roll call.
To make sure you were there?
He ticked me off.
Okay.
Yes.
In the best sense of the word.
Yes. And then, and then after that, my mother decided we need to go to boarding school once again, and off we went to VG.
Okay, in what is now Makanda, in Grahamstown.
Yeah, in Grahamstown.
Yeah. And you sometimes found some entertaining ways to get back to PE?
We were there for a term when we decided that boarding school was really not for us. And we decided to hitch back during a study break one evening. And 2 other friends decided to join us, and the 4 of us ran through the botanical gardens and started hitching back to PE.
4 young girls.
And fortunately, we got a husband and wife in a bakkie picked us up, so we were able to lie down in the back of the bakkie. And I know the schools never thought we'd left town, so they were looking for us around Grahamstown. And we had come back to PE. and to the great disappointment of my stepmother, who made sure we went back the very next day.
Would you say that there is a rebellious streak in you, or is that a kind of one-off thing? Not one-off, but do you think
No,
it's...
I don't know about rebellious. I don't know. Yeah, I mean, it must be in order for us to do that. But I can't even tell you why we did. I just know we really didn't like it. And it was a stressful situation to be in. But I mean, we went back, and one way or another, schooling was completed.
Yeah.
And more one way or another. Yeah, we were. I think we smoked at school and got into trouble for that. So we were rebellious, yes.
A little bit rebellious, perhaps.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But we weren't bad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which in its own way, we've had conversations before, in its own way, it's quite remarkable when you think of bringing yourself up and having had that sense of abandonment early. It's quite amazing in many ways that you guys, you and your sister, managed to stay on the relative straight and narrow as much as you did. Hey?
Yeah, no, definitely.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think that's something quite miraculous in your story. I know you got to run, but I wanted to just wrap it up quickly by saying, and then you married young.
So as soon as I left school, I went to work. And, and I found that, and I got involved with a friend who then, through circumstances, committed suicide. And blamed me because we'd had an argument, and that sent my life into an absolute spiral. I was 18 and I couldn't cope, and I was riddled with guilt and all sorts of things. And then met someone else who was stable, with he just made me feel more stable. And I mean, at 20 I got married.
Yeah.
And it was, well, and truthfully, I felt I'd been there, done that, got all the t-shirts. Why not? Why not give this a try? And then had my first child at 21, and that's when my life made a huge change. Is that when my first son was born, Kevin, I have two sons, and both births I had similar experiences, like renewing at each birth, was that when he was born, I realized that God is in his heaven, and God watches over me, and God has had his hand on me throughout my life. And that is when someone did, I can't do it.
Yeah, it's just too hard for you. Yeah.
Can't do it.
So Sharon, we've now back at our home. We were recording at the office a little earlier, and I suppose not unexpectedly, but it got to the moment, the key moment of your story, in a sense, the whole point of your story, that there was this transforming moment. And so we got to the moment of Psalm 139, and then you were unable to continue. Do you want to give it another go and try and finish off the story for us before we finish today?
Okay. When at the birth of both my children, well, the first child, when he was born, he was perfect, and everything was just so amazing and so overwhelming. And I suddenly realized that God was God. I'd heard about him, but he was something in the distance, nothing real for me. And I realized God was God. And then I realized that God had his hand on me from conception, because all and everything could have gone wrong and hadn't, and then he still blessed me with these beautiful children. And I just realized that I couldn't flee from his presence, and that he knew me from inception, from my mother's womb, and these children had been given to me. They were just perfect, and there's no way that you can have these perfect little creatures unless there is a God above us. It's just impossible. And that turned my life around. I realized that God was there and God was for me.
Yeah.
And it was amazing.
Oh. So to use religious language, not that this particularly matters, but for you, would that be a kind of a conversion experience? Or
Absolutely.
Yeah.
No,
Okay.
dramatically so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because my life had been, people let you down constantly.
Yeah.
But God can be counted on.
So that when you think back on your faith journey, the starting point, you might say, of your faith journey
Absolutely.
was the birth of your
Children.
children. Yeah.
Absolutely.
I know it's been a hangover thing for you to do this, and we are so grateful. And I know that with you, we pray that this will be helpful and a blessing to those who watch. And so thank you for your time. Thanks for risking yourself. And we're going to have supper just now, but I'm still going to say, God go with you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sharon.